So if you look at the props market, Jenks, is there anybody who you would have more faith in than maybe playing a side here?
Yeah, there's a couple I like. First of all, let me get the juiciest of the juiciest prop plays out of the way. When I was handicapping yesterday, I knew it was going to be bad. I didn't realize it was going to be this juicy. Jimmy G to throw a pick. That's at minus 185. Ugh. I'm not going to play that outright. It's too expensive. Maybe you can parlay that with something. He leads the NFL. Let me just give you a quick handicap here. Jimmy G leads the NFL with 8 interceptions. He has made 5 starts this season. He has thrown at least one pick in each of those 5 starts. The Lions defense has made 6 interceptions as a team this year. That's a little bit above the league average. And when you think about game script, don't you think the Raiders are going to be playing from behind? I certainly do. That means more Jimmy G attempts, more Jimmy G passes, and more chances for an interception. So it's minus 185. I can't play it, but I do like that bet. I'm going to go Josh Jacobs under 63.5 rushing yards, minus 130 at BetMGM. He's only gone over this number twice in his last 7 starts. He has not gone over this number at all in any of the Raiders' 5 losses. So when we talk about game script again, I don't see them feeding the ball to Josh Jacobs late because Raiders are going to be playing from behind in this game. He's averaging 2.29 yards per carry. So if you're trying to look at the averages, how does he get over this number? By the Raiders feeding him. I don't see that happening in this game. And the Lions have the number 2 rushing defense in the NFL. I'm on the under when it comes to Josh Jacobs.
I think that's the right play because it goes with the game script and also the fact that, like you said, the Lions have been really stout against the run. I think for me, I would look at the other side and I would go with a prop on Jahmyr Gibbs. I think it's going to be a Jahmyr Gibbs game simply because David Montgomery is going to be out for this one. And usually when Jahmyr Gibbs gets the touches, he really, pays off. He had 68 yards on only 11 carries last time around in a loss to the Ravens. Remember, that was in a loss as well, but also had 58 yards receiving. So a big day when it comes to rushing plus receiving. I'm currently trying to find this number over at BetMGM, but I feel like it would be worth a play in this one. I think it's going to be a big game for him. Finally, it feels like we will see a big game from him. Matchup wise, it looks like the way to play this one is to attack the ground game against the Raiders. They're actually pretty solid against the pass. Maybe that's just because they've been bad at defending the run. But still, it feels like that is a play that I would like to make. I was just looking at the odds because we talk about this in the futures market a lot, that you want to buy into a team at the right spot when you get a good price on them. You don't want to buy a team when they're sitting on top of the mountain. So do you think there's any value in playing the Niners plus 260 to win the NFC? Right now, the Eagles, your favorite at BetMGM to win the NFC plus 220. Let's see what the price is on the Cowboys. I'm not even seeing it. But still, plus 260 for a Niners team that one would think they're going to get healthier and at some point they're going to be better. I do think the one sabotage factor is if Brock Purdy continues to struggle with concussions, there's a chance he could miss some games.
Yeah, I think that's something to keep in mind, and which is something you absolutely should continue to monitor. But I do think your broader point is correct, which is if you're going to buy in on the Niners, now's the time. They've lost 3 straight, and we know they're going to get out of this funk. They're just too good not to. And also, they're going to get healthier. Hopefully, Brock Purdy stays upright if you're back in the Niners, but also they need to get Debo back in the lineup. Christian McCaffrey's been banged up a little bit. So I feel like the Niners are a team. I'm not worried about the Niners. Certainly, you never want to go into a spiral like this, but it's only 3 straight. For another team, I might worry, not with San Francisco. And conversely, Chelsa, the Bengals, here they go again. What do they do every single season? They have won 4 of 5. Joe Burrow talk about being on the mark. 28 of 32, 283 yards, 3 touchdowns. At one point during this game, he completed 19 straight passes. So as bad as the Niners have looked, quietly, here comes Cincinnati.
Yeah, speaking of buy low spots, how about the Bengals to win the AFC at 9-1? This feels like a solid play for a team that has proven they can go head to head with the beast of the AFC. Like, think about it. Is there a single team in the postseason that you would put against Joe Burrow at the top of his game and say Joe Burrow doesn't stand a chance? Like, I wouldn't, especially in the postseason. The Bengals have never been a great regular season team. It feels like they get a wild card and they kind of sneak their way in. But at 9-1, I think that's a very solid price. And I think the biggest takeaway from that Bengals game is that Joe Burrow looks a lot healthier. Now he has his
Yeah.
mobility back, which he was never a quote unquote dual threat quarterback, but he's very shifty. If you saw some of the plays in that game, scrambling out of the pocket, out of a tackle, and then completing a bonkers pass, like that's what Joe Burrow does. So now that he's had some time to heal, I think we will start to see the Bengals team that we've seen in years past. My thinking is all askew because those first two games did not plan out, did not go how I expected. So now, if you look on the previous sample size, you would say, okay, this is the game to play the Diamondbacks. But again, I was wrong in the first two games. So now I am in a mental pretzel. Am I telling myself, okay, go with your gut here? Brandon Pfaadt has been a great pitcher this postseason. And plus, the Diamondbacks bats are hot. Do we just simply play the Diamondbacks at a pick 'em price here? Or do we try to get creative and look at some of these props? But here's the thing. Sometimes I think that you can overthink things. And instead of playing your gut feeling, you try to get too cute and say, well, what about head-to-head markets for strikeouts? Brandon Pfaadt over Max
Right.
Scherzer. But sometimes at the end of the day, you go with, the pick you like first, and that would be the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, I like the Diamondbacks in the full game. I really do. I think this is their game to win, and they have been the better team, I think, through the first two games of the series, even though the Rangers had that incredible comeback in game one in the walk-off by Garcia. I think you make a really good point, which is, look, you can go into the numbers, you can analyze any bet to death and go over it, and you can make a case for both sides. That's why point spreads exist, right? And that's why betting is so hard. You can always make a case most of the time, the vast majority of the time, I feel like, for both sides. But for me, I'll keep it simple, and I just cannot fade Brandon Pfaadt in this spot. So if I'm betting this game, I would go Diamondbacks first five money line. You know, I love my first five picks, but especially here because I don't want to give way to that Diamondbacks bullpen. I think you're going to back Arizona. You back a guy who has been not unhittable, but who has been spectacular in the second half of the season, in the playoffs. Just look at what Brandon Pfaadt has done. And I owe this guy an apology. I'm telling you, he's a young guy, and I was all over fading him, made some money doing that. But man, once he came back to the bigs after working on his stuff, and it takes this happens to all young pitchers in Major League Baseball. You know that, right? It takes time for them to sort of develop their game and get right. But man, in his last 5 starts going back into the regular season, he has given up more than 2 runs only once. Last 3 games in the playoffs against the Dodgers, and then in 2 performances against the Phillies, he's given up a total of 2 earned runs in 14 innings.
Jenks, do you want to go off menu or do you want to pick somebody off the list? Who is your MVP?
I'm going to go with Adolis Garcia because A, it's the World Series. B, how does it get better than a walk-off in the World Series? And also, I don't know how this series is going to play out, but this was one of those moments where you potentially save the series for your team, because I think you could make a strong argument that the Diamondbacks have been the better team in both games, right? They gave up that lead in the 9th inning, so arguably they should have won game 1, and then Kelly was unbelievable in game 2. So if not for Garcia with that game-winning home run, all of a sudden we could be looking at the Rangers in an 0-2 hole. And I admit to being somewhat biased by the fact that he has done this throughout the postseason, just again and again and again in big spots. So I'm going with the slugger from Texas.
All right, so there were a couple of get off your couch moments over the weekend for me, and that's saying a lot. It takes a lot to get my butt off the couch, but that Adolis Garcia one was one of them. But I don't think you can necessarily give it out to him without giving a slight nod to Corey Seager, because Corey Seager hit the 2-run bomb in the bottom of the 9th to get them 2 extra innings. But who I'm going to go with, not Will Levis, who also got my butt off the couch when he was dropping dimes to D-Hop on the regular for my Tennessee Titans. I'm going to go Merrill Kelly here because I think this is still the better storyline. There is nobody better to put on a clinic for the Arizona Diamondbacks throw 7 innings, and only give up 1 run in the World Series other than Merrill Kelly. This guy breathes, lives, and will probably die in the desert because he started there. He went to high school in Scottsdale. He went to junior college in Prescott, Arizona. He went to Arizona State. And then you look at the road that he's had to travel to get here to the World Series. He had to go play 4 seasons in Korea, finally made his way back to the major leagues. And at the age of 35, he has played in his first postseason ever. So to do this in the World Series, and also dating back to the last series against Philly, pitching Game 7 against that crowd, I think you have to give it to Merrill Kelly. What a season for a guy who was not supposed to be one of the big names in the World Series. So MVP of the weekend, Merrill Kelly, Arizona Diamondbacks.